You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's Travis Currah and Sheldon Jones getting you ready for week 4 of CFL football. Coming up in this show, we'll talk about the kickers from the CFL that have been fined, Sheldon's updated power rankings, and we will be giving away a prize on Two and Out. The first time we've given away a prize in a long time, and the first time with Sheldon Jones. I'm very excited to do this. But Sheldon, after the Stanley Cup, it remains true. An American team has won the Grey Cup more recently than a Canadian team winning the Stanley Cup. Isn't that wild?
It is very wild. Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Like, did you see the ratings from Game 7? It was Sportsnet's biggest broadcast ever. And that tells me, Sheldon, there are a lot of Florida Panthers fans in Canada.
Yep, that's the only thing I can think of. Like, I had it on in the background. I wasn't really paying attention too much, but
yeah, we're kidding. I understand that losses like that do cut deep. They hurt the soul, and Oilers fans will be thinking about that for a long, long time. So close. But let's get back to the football talk. Mr. Sheldon Jones, you've upgraded your power rankings after week 3, and there was a lot of movement this time around.
There was, yeah. I saw last weekend there wasn't very much movement, so I kind of figured I needed to do some, but some people liked it, some people didn't like it, whatever, I don't care. So here they are, number 1 still Montreal. Like, literally, they're the team in the CFL. Like, until someone beats them, and probably beats them at least a couple of times. Like, one loss isn't going to take them out of 1, I don't think, unless they really play bad. But we'll see what happens. Toronto against them will be a good game this week. So Montreal's number 1. I have Saskatchewan moving up to number 2. That was controversial. People thinking it's a homer take. I honestly don't think it's a homer take, because the Riders, they may have dominated a winless team, but they dominated. The score flattered the Ticats. And BC, they only beat the absolute worst team in the league by 2 points. So that's kind of why that happened. BC moves up to 3, and the Argos go from 2 to 4, which, fair or not, they put up a lot of points against Edmonton, but they also gave up a lot of points against Edmonton. So we'll see what happens this week against Montreal, like I said before. Number 5, I have Calgary. I broke my rule here because Calgary was 6 last week, and they were on bye, but I could not have either Edmonton or Ottawa or any of these other teams above Calgary with how just poor they've been playing, so I had to move Calgary up. So Edmonton went from 8th to 6th just because of the amount of offense they were able to put up on the Argos in Toronto. Ottawa went from 5 down to 7 because they showed us that they still are who we thought they were, I guess. Hamilton went from 7 to 8 because of getting dominated by the Riders, and back to back. That's hard to do. Like, it's usually in a back to back, it's most likely going to be a split. So for them to lose 2 in a row, that's not good. And then I have the Bombers. They're still number 9th, but I have the Atlantic Schooners above them. I have Team Canada at the U20 World Football Champions above them, and of course our Stanley Cup champions, Canada's team, the Florida Panthers. But again, like, Bomber fans, I don't feel for you. Sorry.
Now, let's talk about, it's the Under-20 World Football Championships happening in Edmonton. Now, Japan punched their ticket to the final at Commonwealth Stadium by beating the U.S. Now, as we're recording, so we can't talk about it on the show, Canada is going to be playing Austria in the other semifinal for the right to play Japan in the final, but a cool event in Edmonton. Some of the best junior football players in the world, in Canada, playing football at Commonwealth Stadium. That is pretty cool. Now, as far as CFL football goes, some fines were levied last week. Commissioner Randy Ambrosie not very happy with several kickers in the CFL, including Sean White out of BC, Lewis Ward out of Ottawa, Brett Lother out of Saskatchewan, and Sergio Castillo out of Winnipeg. I think Sergio said he got fined $250 or something like that, but they all came out in the media. They spoke out against the microchipped balls, so now there's the option for kickers to use those or not during games, but I mean, not surprising. Although I will say this, I wish players kind of were allowed. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that. I do wish they were allowed to do whatever they want on social media within reason. I guess I should add that caveat. I guess, you know, the reason and the well, I guess regular people don't follow it. I take everything I said back, but I'm not really surprised they got fined, Sheldon.
No, I'm not either. And if it's only $250, like I think Sergio was like the most intense of the out or the speaking out, I guess. So if they're getting fined $250, that's actually less than a player would be fined if they throw a microchipped ball into the crowd after scoring a touchdown. So
that's true.
That's fine. But I'm a little bit more worried. Not worried, I guess, just disappointed in Randy's words that came with this. He called it embarrassing.
Yeah, they were strong words, man.
Like, he called kickers who, you know, their one job is to kick a football. And if there's something in the football, whether or not we as fans think it's going to affect it, if there's something in the football that is causing kickers to miss, or they think it's causing themselves to miss, and they could potentially lose their jobs over that, that's an important issue. And then Randy said it wasn't these players spoke out. It was that he got letters from Craig Reynolds and Wade Miller and another president, or from the president, Brian Ramsey, from the president of the Players Association. And he said that's the reason why he changed, or they made this decision. So you're not listening to your players, you're listening to your presidents, which again, those are his bosses. So I guess I get that. But you're calling this embarrassing. He has never once said that the Chad Kelly situation is embarrassing for the CFL. That's all I'm going to say.
Enough said. I think there's going to be another fine levied, but this time for a quarterback. So let's just dig into it. McLeod Bethel-Thompson kind of ripped the CFL and the schedule makers this week, saying, you know, it brings up player safety concerns when the Elks are having a 5-day week, and that in a 9-team league, this shouldn't be happening kind of thing. Now, I guess this just brings up the question of the schedule at all. It's Canada Day weekend, so if you're in Canada, I know we have lots of listeners in the States. I guess 4th of July coming up, so holidays everywhere. Happy Canada Day. If you're going to be taking part, make sure you do so safely. But I've seen comments out there, you know, calling out the CFL for no games on Canada Day, and I'm starting to see more and more sort of comments about Sunday games. We had a message on TikTok actually from a Ticat season ticket holder who says these Sunday games to attend, they blow. Now overall, I mean, the downs attendance in Saskatchewan, I see people kind of talking about Sunday games, but then I hear that the TV audience loves it. So the schedule maker job is a job I don't want. You can't win the stadium availability. It's like Tetris, and figuring this thing out, it's not easy. Now I see people calling out McLeod Bethel-Thompson, saying he should suck it up, be a pro. That's what being a pro is all about. But I think both things can be true. The schedule sucks, And yeah, he does have to deal with it, but I think he is dealing with it. He's not wrong. The Elks have 2 games in a row on the road on different sides of the country. That's hard. That's very tough. One in Toronto, one in Vancouver. But anyway, he's going to get fined. If you want to talk about McLeod Bethel-Thompson, feel free. But talk about the schedule, in general, Sheldon. What do you think about the Sunday games overall? I personally... And we saw the massive numbers that the Stanley Cup brought in. And personally, this is unpopular. I don't care. I preferred a Canada Day weekend kickoff to the last weekend in November. That's just what I prefer. But now we start at the beginning of the June. We compete with the Stanley Cup. We got 1 game a week. I would prefer... a game on Friday, 2 on Saturday, and 1 on Sunday. I could do without the Thursdays. That's how I would like to see it, but it is what it is. I deal with it and go to the games and watch the games either way. Whenever they're on, they're on. But what do you think about all this?
I'm kind of torn because I do love the 4 games, especially over the summer months, because honestly, as a fan of this league, I like to be able to watch it over multiple days. Sometimes I can't sit and watch 2 games in a row on a Saturday, depending if I'm working or whatever. But as far as that Friday and then the 2 on Saturday and the 1 on Sunday, I agree with you. That is the ideal schedule. But I don't have a problem with Thursday night games, just because to me, it kind of makes it feel like the weekend is here a day earlier, kind of, because I get that football on Thursday night, and then I know it's Friday the next day, and the weekend is here. But yeah, making the schedule, it's a very, a couple years ago, or it might have even been pre-COVID, the actual schedule maker went on Twitter and showed, how they have, 17 tabs open in Excel and trying to figure out everything. And
I've
they
talked
make,
to him at Grey Cups, and...
Yeah.
It's a job, man.
Yeah, and he makes 4 or 5 schedules to try to fit everything in. So I get it's hard, but at the same time, you gotta look at the schedule and see this week and be like, man, how can I actually make this the schedule? I don't know what else is going on in the stadiums right now. I'm not sure why they wouldn't have been able to take this game in BC and move it to the Saturday and put another game on Thursday. I'm not sure why that's not possible. And so, like you said, I think both are right in the situation. It's not a good schedule. It's not in the vein of player safety. But at the same time, I like that McLeod Bethel spoke up, because he's the leader of that team.
Yeah.
And again, he's probably going to get fined $250 if that's the going rate for a fine. I think for a guy who's, making, $400,000 or $500,000 to play football for 6 months of the year, I think he can afford that to be that leader of the team. But I'm here for the 4 games a week. I also someday want to do the 4 games in 1 week. I think the CFL screwed up this year, because there is a weekend that friends of mine, I think it's next weekend or the weekend after, but there's 3 games in the East on consecutive days, and so they're going for that trip. They could have made that 4th game in the East and make it. They could easily make it a thing. Once a year where they have this, they could sell premium tickets, they could sell packages, travel. But there's enough fans, maybe 100 or so, that would do that, I'm sure, in this league. So I hope that's something that they look forward, or they look to do in the future, because it's something you could market. It could be a cool weekend of the year for hardcore CFL fans to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, I think that would be fun too. I don't know if they want to keep the West out of an entire week, but hey, maybe they could do West 1 week, before. East the next. Yeah, it has happened before. Hey, that sounds fun to me. I would do it if I had the chance to do it. But yeah, let us know what you think about Sunday games or anything to do with the schedule in the comments or on Twitter, anything like that. But it is a tough assignment for the Edmonton Elks. No way to diminish what he had to say. Not much preparation here, especially traveling back from Toronto after a Saturday night game. The Lions are 7.5-point favorites over the Edmonton Elks this week. The over-under is set at 52.5. Offensive lineman Brett Boyko is set to make his season debut for the Elks. He's going to play right tackle while Hunter Stewart is going to move into guard because Thomas Jack Cardilla ended up getting hurt last week against Toronto. And Gavin Cobb is set to make his first start at slot back. Herji Mayala looks like he's going to hit the one-game injured list here. It's tough. He's already got 3 touchdowns this year. I hope he's back on the field soon. But now the Elks got a bit of a numbers crunch at receiver because I know they think highly of Gavin Cobb, and he does have some great potential, I think. But the 2 Canadians there, they might be, I don't know, battling for a roster spot the rest of the season if they're both healthy.
Yeah, they're both good, so I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But they may actually get some looks because with Hergy not in there, the double team's probably going to go to Eugene Lewis or Curly Gittens Jr. So between those 2 players, or Cobb, like between all those 3 players, I guess there should be 2 of them that aren't double teamed, and McLeod can hopefully find them.
It's a good problem to have because even Dylan Mitchell's been getting the deep looks from Bethel-Thompson. So, I mean, the passing game is not the problem in Edmonton right now. Are they going to be able to get the running game going against the Lions this week? Maybe that's, I don't know. There just hasn't been the holes there. I believe in Kevin Brown. I think he can be a great running back.
Oh, he showed it already. Last year, he was a great running back.
Yeah. So can they get it going against the Lions? We'll see what happens here. There's been shuffling in BC's receivers as well as Travis Fulgham has been released. He did have a cup of coffee in the National Football League. He actually had a touchdown this season with the BC Lions, but some drops, maybe not adjusting quick enough. I don't know if there's any more stories behind the scenes there, but seems pretty quick. If you can't pick it up quickly, it's a tough business. The CFL, man, you can get sent packing pretty quickly sometimes.
Well, and especially if you're not an established star player in the league already. Like Travis comes up from the NFL and maybe he thought he was, too good, or maybe he thought it was going to be a cakewalk. We've seen that happen before when NFL players have come up here and then it just hasn't worked out. Like if you have a guy like Tim White who's also having issues with drops, he's a star player. You're going to let him get through those drops because you have that investment in him already. But when you have a guy who's first time in the league and he's only catching 6 out of 16 passes, then yeah, it's kind of surprising they maybe he didn't want to go to the practice roster, because you would think that maybe they would have offered him that, and maybe he thought he was too good for that. I'm not sure, but football is a business that you can't be dropping it. You gotta catch the rock.
Yeah, performance-based business,
that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, the Lions are in the business of winning too,
Yeah.
even though they've gotten an all right start to the season. Canadian big receiver Javon Cotoy is going to be back into the lineup after dealing with a hamstring injury, so he'll be at slots while Aiden Eberhard is going to move to the outside where Travis Fulgham was. Vernon Adams Jr. comes into this game a little banged up. He did miss Tuesday's practice, dealing with an abdominal injury there. So, hey, sometimes these injuries, you don't want to say it out loud, but they kind of become targets. I'm not saying that you want to go spear the guy like in the Roman Reigns way, not leading with the helmet kind of thing. Yes, and condolences to the Anawahi family, the loss of Sika. But the Elks are going to want to get to him and make him move and test that injury a little bit here. Now, last week, the Lions had great pass pro against the Bombers. Will they be able to do that against the Elks? That's going to be a big story in this one, I think.
Yeah, it was a tale of two offenses. So it'll be very interesting to see which offensive line shows up, because, like you said, he does have that target on him, and you know that Chris Jones is going to be blitzing him to try to make him run around a little bit more. And if it is some sort of muscle injury in the abdomen, him having to make cuts and go around, and hopefully they're not playing to injure a player, but when you have a player who has something that you might be able to exploit, of course you're going to try to do that. So they're going to have a lot of pressure on them. So hopefully they're able to withstand that for Vernon's sake.
Yeah, and we're seeing Vernon Adams Jr. grow into the quarterback we all knew he was capable of. You saw Winnipeg blitz him late in the fourth quarter last week. They picked it up, and they put the game away with that big completion to Alexander Hollins. So he's a lot more calm back there. He's seeing the defenses. It's all slowed down for him. Man, I'm rooting for this guy. We both had him as our MOP pick in 2024, and so far, I think he's well on his way there. I'm going to knock on wood. Sometimes you get the 2-and-out bump, but you can also get the 2-and-out jinx, and I don't want to jinx BA.
We don't want to jinx him because Bellini's at Cactus Club. They're coming.
If the Lions win this week, go to the Cactus Club for the after party with Alexander Hollins. I love
Bellini's
that.
on him.
I've watched that 100 times. Post-game interview.
Yeah. Like that, he's so excited and he's just so happy. I love it.
215 yards last week against Winnipeg. Obviously the leading receiver in the CFL. I actually think, now, he's not going to get 200 yards every game, but I think he's got the ability, and the Lions offense has the ability to get him to a 1,500-yard season or something like that.
Yeah, if he can, 100%.
We're poised, I think, for a big season from number 13, and I'm here for it. I'm excited to watch it. The Elks are going to have their hands full with that Lions offense this week. Now, maybe the Elks are going to bring the heat like they did early against Toronto, and Toronto adjusted and ran at them and, took that power out of their hands. Is this the week that the Lions get the running game going? If I could bet, I actually might say this might be the game where William Stanback gets his first touchdown of the year. He was so close against Winnipeg. This week kind of seems like it might be his week to get to pay dirt, man.
I hope so.
Is that a spoiler alert?
It could be.
The Lions do have another change on defense. Ben Hladek, the linebacker, is going to miss the game with a thumb issue, but they do have a bit of Canadian depth at that position. Bo Lacumbo is going to take over at weak side linebacker. Another key to the game here is, how do the Elks limit the explosive play? They seem like they can kind of hang around and they can, make your offense question things. But we talk about Chris Jones being a defensive guy. There seems to be a play or two, a half, maybe towards the end of the half, where there's just all of a sudden a 45-yard run or a 50-yard pass that just deflates the team. Like they're not, able to make teams work for those. Like, they just give up these explosive plays, and for their sake, that needs to stop. But they're against a team that's very capable of making those plays on a regular basis.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about Chris Jones really anymore because I think if you're an Elks fan, you might almost be hoping they continue to lose to get rid of him. I don't know. Like I'm not sure if that's an actual thing or not. But the BC Lions, as you said, are very explosive, and if the Elks do lose again after giving up a bunch of explosive plays, that hot seat is just going to keep getting hot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can say that they lost the first 3 games by 1 score, but they ended up being more digits in the loss column. And Edmonton doesn't want those to add up again. Friday Night Football was a heavyweight battle last week. Records out of the equation between the Bombers and the Lions. But this week, it's another heavyweight battle. The battle of the undefeated teams. The Alouettes, 3.5-point favorites as they go to Toronto, where the over-under is at 50.5. Now, Montreal's won 11 games in a row overall. Toronto's won 11 in a row at BMO Field. If we forget about, and I think Argo fans would appreciate this, the East Final, where the Alouettes went to BMO, and yeah, we know the rest of that story. Did you see this story from PK Pelledo, the owner of the Montreal Alouettes? And I quote, "There's no money to be made in football now." This is after a sellout crowd in Montreal. I mean, at least maybe he kind of knows what he's getting into. Is that the positive to take out of it?
Well, I think so. I didn't actually read the article, but I did see the headline before. And for most of these owners, I think they need to look at owning a CFL team as like a passion project. Like you have like caretaker Bob, who obviously just loves the Ticats, loves football, and he's willing to put a bunch of money and to lose a bunch of money just because he loves it that much and he has enough money that he can withstand doing that. And you see Amar Doman, who's putting a lot of money into the Lions, but he has a different situation where he has a stadium that can fit 50,000 people. So if they can get the marketing up and they can, sell consistently 30,000, 40,000 tickets to games, then they can make a profit off that. When you're playing in McGill Stadium and you have like a cap at like 20,000 people, I can understand how PKP can say that he's not going to make any money there. I'm not saying they should go back to the Big O. That's dumb. Like, but I'm saying like I can understand how he can say that, but it also just shows that he is passionate about it, and that's why he bought the team, and I love that about him.
Yeah, I like that about him too. Now the Argos here, they're experiencing a little bit of offensive line injuries right now. Some will say they're the best in the CFL, but on the injury report, Dejon Allen is limited in practice as of Wednesday. He's listed as questionable. Darius Sirocco is going to miss this game too. He didn't practice. He's got a hip injury, so they did bring in offensive lineman Landon Rice, who has been around the CFL for a little while here. But I think interesting news from the injury report, Devaris Daniels has been practicing in full, and obviously that would be a big addition to the receiving core. He just hit the 6-game injured list last week with defensive lineman Folarin Orimolade, and Daniels is practicing in full already. And I don't know if you've noticed the same thing. I've been seeing a rise, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm paying attention, of guys getting pulled off 6-game injured lists almost every week. It's kind of crazy what's been going on.
It is, but it's just another way to stash players on your roster, right? Yeah. Because there's no penalty really, other than you have to pay him and it counts towards your cap. But the thing that I don't understand about this is I thought it was the rule that you could only practice on the last week that you were on the 6-game list. So to me, it doesn't make sense that Double D has been able to practice when he's on the 6-game list. So unless that rule has changed, maybe you guys in the comments can let us know if that's the case. But that was my recollection, that you had to sit on the injured list, or on the IR or 6-game or whatever it is, for 5 weeks, and then that last week you were able to practice.
And I really thought that there was one guy or two guys a year that you could bring off the 6-game without any penalty.
I thought so too.
But it really seems like every team is doing this every week. Really, either way, maybe he's got Wolverine healing powers, and good for him getting back onto the roster anyway. And they've got another injury issue. Isaiah Cage is questionable with a shoulder injury. Now, that offensive line is the bread and butter to the Argonauts offense. It's how they run the ball so effectively. It's how they're able to keep their young quarterbacks protected and moving the ball and still winning. Kadeem Carey, also questionable, the running back there with a bit of a groin issue. Now, he practiced in full on Wednesday, limited on Tuesday. They gave him the ball a lot last week, and he was dealing with, you could tell he was nicked up a little bit, but I think you watch all these running backs in the league, and that's a hard job, man. You're in a car crash almost every single play. But I'm pretty... Yeah. I like what I've been seeing from Deontay McMahon. I wonder if they're going to give him the ball at running back a little bit more this week. It's an interesting battle because the Argos are averaging 153 rushing yards a game. Granted, they've only had 2. The Alouettes are giving up under 75 rushing yards a game. That is going to be an interesting battle. The front for the Argos on offense, and for the Alouettes on defense.
Yeah, I always love when it's a team that's dominant. When they're both dominant at something and they come together, it's always fun to see which team is better prepared and can do that. I didn't look. I'm terrible at looking at the injury list. I'm glad you do, so that you can give it to me and stuff like that. But like, I was thinking about taking Kadeem Carey this week, but again, I was hesitant just because of the fact that Montreal has been very stingy against the run. So I ended up not taking him, but it's possible that they could bust through there. Like, it's...
Oh, yeah. I think any defense, I think, can be broken down and worn down.
Yeah.
Just as long as they commit to it and don't fall behind, you know?
Yeah, and that's what coaching and scouting and the scout offense is all about, right? So the coaches get paid to coach too, so it's always fun to see these matchups.
Titus Wall is expected to make more of an impact on the Montreal defense. Now, we've joked, I think a lot of people have joked about how many former Stampeders are on the Argos roster. But Montreal's got Sean Lemon, Darnell Sankey, Titus Wall, all former Stampeders. They've done a good job of developing some of the powerhouses in the East Division, Sheldon.
Yeah, Calgary is a factory for Toronto and Montreal.
I love it, but this somebody is going to lose. Well, I guess they could tie. I think that's big money if you bet on that and it actually happens. But somebody is gonna get rid of that goose egg in the loss column this week in Toronto. Now, I'm fascinated by this game at McMahon Stadium on Saturday, Sheldon, because the Bombers obviously have been struggling and they're 0-3. And I think it's fair to say that the Stamps have surprised. It's only been 2 games. But if the Bombers can't get to Jake Maier like they couldn't get to Vernon Adams Jr., I know the Bombers are 3.5-point favorites here. The Stamps could really surprise on Saturday, and I don't think it would be surprise me if they won.
I don't see how the Bombers could be favored here. Like, I literally don't see it. What have they done to show that they should be favored against what Calgary has done. I'm baffled, but I think Calgary will win. I'm I've taken Winnipeg every week this year because I thought that, oh no, they're gonna get it. They're gonna get it. They're the Bombers, but fool me once, shame on me. That whole saying. I think that, like you said, Mayer is looking really good. Like he's getting his help he needs from his receivers. He's getting the time from the O-line to actually step up into the pocket and not be running around and throwing off his back foot. And what has the Bombers haven't shown us that they're able to really disrupt the quarter. Like, I guess against BC a little bit. No, not really. Like, what have they shown? Like, until they can show us that they're actually a team worth betting on, or that's actually going to win, I don't think they're going to win. Especially they have to travel to Calgary, and McMahon playing in McMahon is not fun. Everyone says McMahon's turf is terrible. At least the Stamps are used to that. uh, I don't. I could be wrong, but I don't see any chance that Winnipeg has winning this game.
Look, I'm a fan of Nick Dembski, but as it stands right now, it's been said that Dalton Schoen and Carrick Wheatfall are going to be out for an extended period. And that...
So's Kenny.
Yes. I like Dembski. But is he a number one guy?
No.
I don't...
He hasn't been. No.
I don't think it's unfair to say that he's benefited from having Lawler and Schoen out there. And Dembski's been able to feast on defenses, but now he's going to draw the number one, cornerbacks in the league, the halfbacks in the league. And that's going to be tough, I think, for him and the Bombers going forward.
They had Strevler lining up at receiver often in the end of the game there. Like, I know they've had some practice time to get somebody off the practice roster or whoever and get some more receivers in there, but yeah, Nick Dembski, he's never been able to show that he's the guy. He's just an explosive guy who's able to benefit off of star athletes getting double covered. I think he's a hell of a player. I think he is a hell of an athlete. I think he has a really great heart. He loves playing football. He loves playing for Winnipeg. I loved him when he was here as a rider, but even when he was here as a rider, he wasn't a number one. He's that perfect middle of the pack receiver who is going to get a bunch of yak yards just because of how athletic he is, and he'll take those jet sweeps and all of that. But like you said, when he's going to have the attention, when he's going to be the one who's double teamed, I don't think he's coming down with all those 50-50 balls.
Well, he's going to be out there to prove us wrong. He's almost kind of, a little bit of, because he can play running back. Like he's got that talent to be able to do that.
He's super athletic.
Of course.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's just blow after blow after blow to the Bomber offense. And Zach Collaros doesn't have a passing touchdown yet, man.
Well, and he hasn't had time. So you have to think about he's down his two best receivers plus this other guy who's shown that he can be serviceable.
We had a 100-yard game in his debut.
Yeah. And that's with Zach not being able to have the protection that he's used to. Now imagine you don't have somebody who you can count on other than Dembski out there. And like, Calgary is going to feast on them. They're going to pin their ears back, and they are just going to blitz the hell out of them. And we've seen what happens sometimes when Zach gets rattled. It's kind of like when Bo gets rattled. But on the contrary, we've seen Zach get rattled and just go into domination mode before. But that's when he's had all of his players. So who knows what Zach is going to show up here? Who knows what O-line is going to show up, what receivers are going to catch the ball. Like, is Oliveira healthy yet? Is it going to be Augustine? Like, there's so many question marks right now and on a team that's used to having no question marks.
It is good news for the Bombers that Dietrich Nichols is going to get back into the lineup, their number one cover man. But I know you brought up Brady Oliveira. This has to be the Oliveira show for the Bombers to win. And I don't know what was going on last week. He wasn't happy being listed number 2. He says he's healthy. If he's healthy, get the guy 20 carries. Like, at least. Buck Pierce has a lot of work to do this week as the Bomber offensive coordinator, get them ready against the Calgary Stampeders. And traditionally, Dave Dickinson and company have been very good off the bye. Like you said, you don't know why Winnipeg's favored here. This is a real opportunity for the Stampeders, and I really could see the game going either way. But as Oliveira said, that Bomber offense needs to be more physical. And James Butler, and I know this sounds out of left field, but he had his only good game so far this year against Calgary in week 1. So Winnipeg just on the road, be boring, be physical, take it to them with the ground game. Brady looks mad. He wants the ball. I think that's the path to victory for the Bombers. But for the Stampeders, they could pick apart that Bomber secondary if they're not going to pressure him. I really think Mayer could have a good game.
For sure he can. Yeah. Again, like I said before, I just don't see anything in that defense right now that is going to show that they're going to be any different than any of these other games. Like, Ottawa looked like a really good team against them. And I know that game was Drew Brown fired up to play against his former team, so that's part of it there. And he also knows what that defense is. But I don't know, man. This is gonna make me and my anti-Jake Mayer-ness look foolish, I think.
Well, the criticism you take is that you hate Winnipeg and Calgary. Now they're playing each other, so this is 100% like unbiased, right?
100%. I want them both. I want a tie, a 0-0 tie. Like,
no, not 0-0. I've Reggie Bagleton in my lineup, so give me some points, man. Now, the Stampeder receiving core, I think they could have a nice game. Cam Eccles debuting in the CFL this year. He had a touchdown in week 1. They've got the veterans in Mark and Michelle and Reggie Bagleton. I know people are high on Clark Barnes, the Canadian receiver, and also Jalen Philpott. He had catches last week. And you see what his brother is doing in Montreal. I really think that the Stampeder offense could have a nice game Saturday at McMahon against the Bomber team that is reeling, and it still feels kind of weird to talk about them this way, man.
It's very weird because this is my bias again. This is how I thought Calgary was going to start. So it's very right. It's weird, but we got to go off on a I got to go off on a tangent here because you talked about Canadian receivers. Let's talk about Canadian receivers right now. 4 of the top 10 right now are Canadian. It hasn't happened in a long time. And I can't remember who it was who put out asking if this is the best year. It was
Milt, number 1 in our greatest receiver list of all time.
Yeah, Milt. Sorry. So, like, props to him for recognizing it as an American receiver. But no, like, I think the Canadian receivers are balling out this year. So I just wanted to give that little props there.
Yeah, it is awesome to see. There's, a talented Canadian on every single roster. And, a lot of the talk over the past couple of years has been, changes to the CFL, whether it's adding a fourth down, boo, or getting rid of the ratio kind of thing. But right now, there are Canadians, ratio or not, that are balling in the Canadian Football League, and you love to see it. The day before Canada Day in the nation's capital, the Ottawa REDBLACKS are 1.5-point favorites over the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Both teams suffered a tough loss a week ago, losing by multiple scores. So they're both going to be looking to rebound here. Ottawa looked really good at home against Winnipeg, and the Ticats remain on the road here. Big Wreck will be playing the game in Ottawa. I think Ian Thornley is one of Canada's most underrated musicians. So that's pretty sweet that they got Big Wreck for the game.
It is. It's also kind of funny because that's what this game could be.
Hey, could the REDBLACKS blow it wide open? Little bit of a big... Although,
there you go.
Big Wreck, I'm a big fan of the song Ladylike. That reminds me of grade 8. Like any rock song that includes banjo, I'm in. Like it's just awesome.
I want to go garage sailing and try to find a cheap banjo because no doubt, no lie, there are times where I go down in the deep. My TikTok algorithm is full of banjo.
Really?
Oh yeah, I love banjo and fiddle. I love, I wish I could play a banjo.
My TikTok algorithm is full of men chopping logs.
I've been there. I've been there.
The dude, he chops oak, I don't know. I'm impressed by it.
And shirtless and ripped. And
that guy's got it figured out because the girls watch it because he's a handsome fella. And then I'm like... This guy, I feel like an idiot at the campground trying to chop wood, but this guy's a monster.
The manliest man.
Yeah, I never
I think we need to start a podcast about wood chopping guy.
I never thought that I would be a TikToker, but hey, I go on there once in a while. My algorithm is chopping wood and... delicious food. Oh, man. Did you know there's a place in Calgary that's an all-you-can-eat lobster and prime rib? Oh, it's probably cost $300 a plate, but I think it's worth it.
That'd be worth
it. Now, I think a key to the game here, Hamilton has to look out for Ottawa's special teams. Devontae Dedmon had the return last week. I know it was against Montreal and they were already behind in the game, but in the preseason, in each of the games, the REDBLACKS had a return touchdown. Their special teams is firing on all cylinders right now, and if the Ticats give up a special teams touchdown or any big returns, really, that is a struggle. We've seen Saskatchewan, they were able to have success against them. Now, poor Alfred has a lot of them called back because of penalties, but if Ottawa's going to be able to put, Drew Brown in the offense in good field position, that's going to be a long day for the Tabbies.
Yeah, that's spot on because special teams can just flip the game on the dime. And, that's the key to the game for Hamilton. Also, did he get rid of the cement on his hands?
Oh, man.
That's got to be the other one.
I'm starting to feel bad for him because now, late in the game against Saskatchewan, I know you were at the game, but it's like the camera's on 12 and 19 every play. Can they figure it out? Can they get this going? I think they will.
He's a really good receiver.
He is.
It's mental. This is all mental. He didn't forget how to catch balls. So there's something going on mentally that hopefully they can figure out. And honestly, playing against a team like Ottawa is probably a good recipe for that. Ottawa does have a really good defense, when it comes to their line and their linebackers. I'm not sure if their DBs are their strength on defense. So I think that there is potential there for Bo to be able to find Tim White, and hopefully this can be the game for him that he, gets out of his slump. It's like in baseball, players will go in a slump, and then, they'll go off and hit home runs
Yeah.
after home runs. So hopefully for Ticat fans and for just for Tim White himself, he can bounce back here.
Well, I really think that they need to get the running game going. Like,
Oh, for sure.
if it feels like if the Ticats don't have success with James Butler, then really they just don't have much success. And look, Ottawa's going to be tough to pull that off against. And you did mention the secondary. That's where Ottawa's had some injuries to start the season. Some veteran players in the CFL getting hurt and sitting on the sidelines. So quarterbacks, and last week Montreal really took advantage of that. Will Bo and the Ticats be able to take advantage of that? And we know teams copy each other. They copy game plans from each other. You saw what the Alouettes did against Ottawa. Like, Drew Brown literally just didn't turn the ball over. And he didn't get into games often in Winnipeg. But last week, the interception, losing a fumble, the Ticats got to get after him. And they haven't had much success getting after quarterbacks. It sounds like,
No.
simple football science or whatever, but Mark Washington's unit needs to figure that out in a hurry if they want to get into the win column.
Yeah, like this last week, I think they had a couple sacks and they had one interception, but that interception was like a 50-yard bomb that was basically like a punt. And so they need to be more aggressive on defense. They need to, swarm to the ball, punch it out. Like, it's desperation time for Hamilton. We say it's desperation time for Winnipeg, but it's the same thing for Hamilton. Uh, they they can't just continue to think that they're this close and not get there. They need to, I don't know. Is it time to move on from Bo if they lose again? Is it time to see what Powell can do? If you're Scott Milanovich, you can't wait too long. He said himself, this isn't a reload or rebuild, it's a reload. And when you have an aging quarterback who's still in there, it's not a rebuild. They're just retooling around him. And you can only do that for so long without winning games.
It's kind of funny because after weeks 1 and 2, we thought, well, Bo's back.
It did look like it.
And then last week against Saskatchewan, the turnovers, another loss. So, I mean, if the losses keep piling up, Taylor Powell had valuable playing time last year, and I think he's shown that he's got ice running through his veins. So a lot on the line for the Ticats here. And hey, the divisional game just adds to it. Bo's going to want to have a rebound game here as well. I think there's an opportunity. There is for sure. And I also want to highlight a couple of receivers because out of Hamilton, with the struggles of Tim White, we haven't really talked about Shamar Bridges. Yeah. But it's a name we've heard a lot. He had 7 catches for 85 yards in week 1. He had 6 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown week 2 against Saskatchewan. And then 9 catches, 113 yards and a touchdown week 3 against Saskatchewan. And then on the Ottawa side, I think there's a star there in Dominic Rhymes that maybe hasn't gotten the ball as much as we thought that he would early this season. But Justin Hardy, man, 19 targets over the first 2 weeks. And he had 7 catches, 111 yards week 1 against Winnipeg. 7 catches, 143 yards against Montreal last week. There's a few receivers, and I think a lot of it has to do with the great quarterback play we've seen so far this season, but a couple underrated guys there in Justin Hardy for the REDBLACKS and Shamar Bridges for the Ticats, who've had nice starts to the season.
Right, and don't forget about Jalen Ackland too. Like he's there, and he's another target for Drew Brown. Uh, but Bridges has looked, as a Rider fan, seeing in the past two games, he's looked really good. Uh, torched torch sales like
Yeah,
up and
yeah.
down the field that second game. And you know, the one kind of big play that Hamilton had last week was that big deep ball that he was able to get in the touchdown. So at least for Hamilton fans' sake, with Tim White dropping the balls, Bridges has been catching the balls. So maybe Bo's gonna keep looking at Bridges and until he can that uh get that funk out of Tim White there. For jeez.
Now, before we get to details and how you can win a prize from Two and Out, I love giving away prizes. It's so much fun. We'll talk about our fantasy lineups. You're in the CFL Podcast Fantasy League. We'll talk about our pick'em. Now, I've built my lineup here. I got $1,000 left over. I got the Ottawa defense. I usually just kind of pick I've struggled with defense. I had the Argos last week against Edmonton. They got like -3 or -4.
Yeah, same.
It was not good. Vernon Adams Jr. is my quarterback and my captain. Deontay McMahon, $3,000. The Argos running back, so I got him there. Brady Oliveira is my other running back. I just feel like he's going to be getting the ball a lot. I got Alexander Hollins. I know he's not going to have 200 yards again, but I feel like no matter what, he's seeing the ball a lot from VA. Reggie Bagleton is my other receiver from the Stampeders. Right now, I've got Cole Speaker of the Alouettes in my flex. He had a touchdown against Edmonton in week 2. Let's see if he can get back into the end zone against the Argos. What's your lineup looking like?
Well, now that I look at it, it's funny because the two people I insinuated that I do not have. So I must have been tooling around with it after. So I have a Calgary defense. Literally, the only reason is because they're the cheapest. Because, like you said, I got a -3 from Toronto last week too. So it's basically just a throwaway pick to see if I can get a couple points. I'm rolling with Cam Dukes again, just because again he's shown that he's able to get points, and he's still relatively cheap at only 10.5 thousand. And he's also my captain. For running back, I have Mills and Fletcher. I again, until Winnipeg can prove that they're the same team, I think that Mills, he runs so hard and fast, and I think he's just going to blow right through them. Fletcher, I think, he should have a good game. Hopefully they can get him involved in the passing game too, because he is kind of dangerous there too. And then for receivers, I have Hollins, Philpott, and my flex is Bailey. I think that Rashad Bailey's going to be a nice target for Cam Duke, so hopefully I can double up on some points there.
Week 4 CFL predictions. The BC Lions 7.5-point favorites over the Edmonton Elks. Friday night football has the Alouettes visiting Toronto as 3.5-point favorites. The Alouettes are. The Bombers 3.5-point favorites as they head to Calgary on Saturday, and the Ottawa REDBLACKS 1.5 points favorites over the Ticats on Sunday. Sheldon, I have BC, Montreal, Winnipeg, Ottawa. Who are your picks this week?
Finally, we're a little bit different. I have BC, Montreal, Calgary, and Hamilton.
Hamilton, hey?
I do think Hamilton will beat Ottawa, yep.
Nice. I am looking forward to that. Make sure you go to twoandout.ca. You can read Sheldon's power rankings. You can hit the shop as well, buy your Two and Out merch. You can rate, review, and subscribe to Two and Out on YouTube and your favorite podcatcher. And you're going to want to go to YouTube because our friend Simon, the Bombers fan from Winnipeg, sent me this. The John Gott bobblehead. I love this so
bobblehead
much
ever.
Oh, I think it's incredible. But I'm going to keep the one that Simon got me, but I have 2 of them in my possession, the way things have worked out. So I do want to give one to somebody in Two and Out Nation. Now, I know on YouTube you can watch anywhere in the world. I'll make the only rule that you have to be in North America. I don't want to ship it over the pond. If you do listen across any pond, thank you for listening to Two and Out. But we want you to have your very own John Gott Ottawa REDBLACKS bobblehead to enter to win. Subscribe to Two and Out on YouTube and leave a comment on this video, and we'll do the draw next week if we get to over 400 subscribers. There's only 8 to go. So we should, I think, be able to get to over 400 by next week's Week 5 preview. We'll announce the winner then, so head to YouTube, subscribe, and you're entered to win this John Gott bobblehead. I thanks Simon for getting one. It's gonna be on the shelf behind me in the next episode, but I do now have an extra. The way things work out, we want to make sure you get that. Happy Canada Day, Sheldon. You have any plans?
I'll probably check out the fireworks, but it's Monday, so I'll be watching Raw, I assume. But one other thing I just wanted to say about YouTube. I know there's lots of people here who probably don't watch it on YouTube. Even if you listen to, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen, help us out by just going and subscribing on YouTube. It really helps us out. Give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts too, please.
Look at Sheldon. You're just a podcast pro. Happy Canada Day. I'm going to the Rockies. I will talk to you next week if I don't end up in an altercation with a grizzly bear. So have a fun and safe Canada Day. I'm Travis Currah. He's Sheldon Jones. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.